And welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is generational patterns. I think it should be interesting to notice that we can actually trace not only behavioral, but emotional patterns through generations. And that by healing ourselves, we actually do heal and transform generations. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and your organs, and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling, the tingling, and allow that sensation to bring you present right here, right now, into this physical form, this remarkable body that enables you to experience life. And welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good morning. It's a new week. They keep on coming. I guess that's a good thing, right? So today we're talking about generational patterns. And I think this is an interesting topic. The reason that I'm speaking about this topic this morning is that I've been looking at, in my family, along one side of the family particularly, there is a generational pattern of anger, and anger kind of as a first response. Good morning, Lisa. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us this morning. And we're talking about generational patterns, both behavioral and emotional. And in beliefs as well. So I was just noticing, I mean, it used to be that I had a real issue with anger. And in fact, it was so extreme at one point that an employer addressed it with me. So it was serious. And the thing is that as I look at my family, it was quite evident. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. Great to have you here with us this morning. It was really evident that that it was generational, that I don't remember my grandfather. I don't remember anger in relation to him, but certainly my father was very, very quick to anger. And that got passed it on to me and my brother and on to my brother's children as well. And it's really, really interesting to be noticing that pattern. And I had done quite a lot of work with that and noticed that for the most part, my default behavior, moving into anger, had pretty much dissolved and dissipated. But I noticed in a conversation that I had yesterday that there were not quite anger, but like feeling the sparks that comes before the blaze kind of thing. And so I was digging around to look at, where it is generationally and how I might heal it, that healing it with me as an isolated instance, I don't think is quite the same as putting it in the context or container of looking at generational patterns. And so I muscle tested and discovered that this may have originated, and I don't have any way to validate it, with my great great grandfather. And so I've been doing some work to clear that for everybody in the lineage. And I do believe that we have, that as we heal ourselves, we do heal the generations. And why wouldn't the converse be true, that as we heal the generations, we heal ourselves too, right? And it sort of begs the question, or brings up the question for me as to how might these patterns be conveyed. And it reminds me of the story, and I really had thought for a long time that it was a family story, and then I heard it or saw it on the internet too, and realized that it wasn't a family story at all, but it was a story about a pot roast. And and I'll personalize it. My mom would cook this pot roast, and every time she'd cook the pot roast, she'd cut off the end of the pot roast and put it in the oven, and with all the goodies that go with it. And at one point, although it wasn't really me, asked, well, so why are you cutting off the end of the pot roast? And the answer was, well, that's the way my mom always did it. So she went to her mom and asked her why, and she said, well, that's the way my mom always did it. And it turned out that when she went to her mom, the reason that she did it is because the pot that she had for the pot roast wasn't big enough for the whole piece of roast, so she'd have to cut off the end. And that's the behavior that got passed down generationally. Now, again, it's not my personal story, but you can see how these things get passed down as traditions, because it's what we learn, and we don't know to question those patterns. So Lisa says, my brother and sister and I were raised with, I'm not sure what that means. I don't know what the next word is, major anger issues. Since finding out we have different fathers, I realized it was on their father's side. That entire family is combative. Most siblings don't even converse. I was so thankful to learn it was my DNA difference. Good for you, Lisa. So it gives you even more choice. I don't know, this gives us the conversation about nature and nurture, right? Like what's in DNA and what we're taught. So if we're in an environment where anger is the go-to response, we learn that that's how we're meant to respond. If we are in an environment where everybody is defending themselves all the time, then the perspective being that somebody is out to get me, or there's this pretty intense othering, like the other person is a threat or a danger to me, rather than a companion or confidant or supporter, then we learn that separation, and we learn that defensiveness, right? It's what we're shown, so we learn it. It's really interesting to see, like with some of my clients, when they've come to me talking about this terrible pattern that they have, or this something that's causing them a lot of pain, or through which they're experiencing a lot of pain. And when we look at, well, what was your family environment? Oftentimes we discover that was a behavior or a pattern from a parent. And so they learned how to be that way. So I grew up in a family that was very critical, and I learned, good morning, Bernadette, welcome. We're talking about generational patterns. And I learned to be critical and judgmental. And so there's been a lot of unlearning, or a lot of transformation for me to get beyond those patterns that were very, very deeply ingrained. You know, like I was taught there is a right way, and typically I wasn't the one that knew that right way. It was one of my parents, but so that behavior got ingrained, and the self-criticism for doing something wrong also got very much ingrained. And you know, so it's interesting to look at these patterns and to recognize that the things that we struggle with didn't necessarily have origination in ourselves. You know, that maybe, and I'm not looking to lay blame or anything like that. That's not what this conversation is about. But to recognize that there are certain patterns that we grew up with, patterns of communication, patterns of emotional response, that may be very intense challenges for us. And we look at what's wrong with me kind of thing, you know, like what that all this stuff is going on. But when we see it in a greater context, we can give ourselves a little bit more grace, perhaps, to first of all recognize that this is a pattern and it's a habit, it's something we were taught, and then that gives us a little bit more latitude, I think, to be able to move into a different choice. So Bernadette says, it took me years to walk away from the family patterns that refused to just be nice. I hear that, Bernadette. Yes, a lot of families have patterns that are really toxic. You know, like just exiling people, for example. You know, it's like, okay, you and I don't agree, so we're not talking anymore, cutting you off. You know, so like this isolation idea. Good morning, Elaine, welcome. It's great to have you here with us. We're talking about generational patterns. And I think that there's a profound freedom in recognizing that some of our emotional behaviors, even, for instance, fear, anxiety, you know, maybe we're growing up in a very protective environment where you're having to be careful of everything around you. Well, that's a learned pattern of fear, potentially, right? If you're constantly reinforced that the world is threatening, that's something that's taught from one generation to another. And I think it's really interesting to see how these patterns, when they are unquestioned, can continue to propagate from one generation to another. So Rosalind says, generational occupation for Filipino women is to be a nurse. That's, you know, okay, so that's another interesting thing is cultural expectations in different cultures, right? Lisa says, I've tried to explain to that side of the family, but they will not listen. His side of the family was nasty and judgmental. Me being overweight made me a target. I pointed these patterns out to my niece so she could change, but it fell on dead ears. So, Lisa, unfortunately, it takes some self-awareness to be willing to look at one's own, shall we call, challenges, deficits, whatever. And it may just be that your words may come back years from now, and your niece may become aware of the truth of that years from now. Who knows? I mean, I've talked to family members about it, and there's been some recognition, but no no attempts at change from what I could say. Elaine says, wounded children raising wounded children. Exactly, exactly. And in fact, child abuse is something that often occurs, or sexual abuse is something that often occurs generationally. And it takes awareness, as with everything, it takes awareness to be able to address these kinds of patterns. It takes a willingness to recognize that, I think partly to recognize that we're part of a bigger picture, and that can give us more of an inroad perhaps into making an intervention for ourselves anyway. And I believe that whether this is true or not, another one of my working hypotheses, I believe that that we, as we heal ourselves, we heal others. And so Bernadette says, I've always believed behavior is a choice and the train stopped at me. So the thing is, behavior may become a choice once we're aware of behavior. And it's not always as simple as a choice, because there are nuances. When we look at addictions, there are nuances. I may choose to stop doing something and then something overcomes me, or I succumb to a desire or an inclination to do something that I had chosen not to do. Like years and years ago, I had pretty extreme issues with compulsive eating. And I hated myself for it, but I couldn't necessarily stop myself. And I coming to awareness gives greater compassion, gives greater leverage, hopefully, more possibility of choice. And we say all it takes is making a choice, but that's not necessarily a minor thing. And that choice can be very deeply nuanced. Elaine says all change happens from within, loves. Yes. And we have situation. So Elaine says, did you stop yourself from your eating habit? I have managed to pretty much overcome it. And there are times when where I notice myself going into kind of compulsive eating, not anywhere to the degree that I had been in the past, but there are times when it still shows up in one way or another, and it's an opportunity for me to look at what's going on underneath. I mean, I at least am aware of that, to be able to look for what the foundation stimulus is, so that I can address that. And it's interesting, like with addictions, there's all kinds of. So Lisa said, how did you do? It's interesting. I don't think there's one pat answer. Elaine says emotional eating as you learn to get comfortable with feeling. I think I'm pretty comfortable with feeling, but sometimes there's still emotional eating stuff that goes on for me, I have to say. So Lisa says, how did you stop? Well, I have to say that there are periods where I see remnants of that behavior. It was interesting because yesterday was a sort of reactive eating day, which was really interesting that we've gotten into that topic here. I think that's been a generational thing too, in a certain way, is emotional eating. I think what I've done that's been helpful is that I've put my attention on eating healthfully, and partly not having things around that I would binge on. But yesterday it was really interesting. I just went and I bought all kinds of junk. For me, junk, and for other people, my junk is probably still good food for other people. But I guess it's junk. I ate a bag of potato chips that was that had cheese flavor on it, and I ate some what else? Toast with honey, gluten-free, raw honey. And what else did I eat? I ate some toffee, chocolate and almond covered toffee, chocolate, what do they call it? Like brickle bark or something, which was a real indulgence, right? Like all of that. But what happened for me was that I've been doing all this stuff, a big intense cleanse, and taking all these new medication kind of things, and cleansing things to be killing off bugs and stuff. And some of the bugs are candida kind of things that have a mind of their own, that also assert themselves to make people go into these crazy behaviors. And actually they do control our behavior, but let's see. But anyway, so I just had it up to my eyeballs with the restrictions that I'd been under. And I just indulged in these things. I paid a price for it too, because my gut, so I had just done this elimination diet. And the idea with the elimination diet is that you heal your gut, which is a good thing, right? But when you heal your gut, then when you eat stuff that your body doesn't really resonate with, you pay a price for it. So, and my gut's pretty sensitive. So I was just feeling this incredible frustration around the reactions I was getting to all these different foods that I was trying to introduce, and figuring out what can I eat and what can I eat. And I just said, forget it. I'm going to eat what the heck I want to eat. And I went off the rails for the day. So Rosalind says, hesitant to take a vacation or too much time off work. There wasn't a lot of time spent on exploring self-discovery. Work ethic equals worth ethic. Wow, Rosalind, you are so not alone in that. There's so many people that are plagued by that whole idea. In fact, I was working recently with a client where the equation was not being responsible if I don't worry. So, you can imagine they're a very responsible person. So what kind of quality of life are they creating for themselves if they're worrying all the time, right? So Elaine says, energy was really high and fast yesterday. A lot of clearing going on around the world. Well, Elaine, I appreciate hearing that. I have to tell you, because I was like caught up in the whirlwind and I saw it, and you know what, rather than making myself wrong and bad for it, and this is a big difference, like in the past, I would make myself all wrong and bad about it, and that would kind of perpetuate the behavior, because there's a guilt, shame, blame kind of spiral that's easy to fall into. Whereas I didn't do that. And I got to talk to a friend who is my functional medicine doctor. And she said, well, maybe it's just a reset, and today I'm fine. Today I'm like, okay, I completed that. I got it out of my system. Now I'm back on track and ready to roll. Bernadette says, my kryptonite, Ruffle chips, LOL. Well, I have to say these chips were good. They were a little heavy on the salt, but they were really good. And Elaine says comfort food. Yeah, so isn't it funny, you know, that we're often taught to eat to comfort ourselves, you know, because there's a temporary pleasure about that. So Lisa says, I'm so anxious about moving. I ate all day. I hear you, Lisa. So all I'm going to do is recommend that you go do tapping, you know, go and that can support you and allow yourself to be going through the emotional upheaval that you're going through. I think that that's a lot of what was going on or has been going on for me too. There's been a lot of old stuff coming up. It's really interesting, you know, like old emotions, like echoes of old emotions are coming up, and navigating through that has been really interesting and very confronting. So Elaine says there's no right or wrong, and sometimes the body needs those type of foods to clear something out that's trying to let go. I feel you did the right thing by loving yourself and taking care of you. Thank you so much, Elaine. I appreciate it. I mean, I think, you know, you asked how, I'm not sure who it was that asked, how did I stop the compulsive behavior? I think part of it is to not hate myself in the process. You know, it's like when those behaviors arise, recognize them, acknowledge them, don't beat yourself up about it, and then you can let it go. You know, it doesn't have to persist. And Lisa, you know, love yourself through and recognize that you're anxious. Maybe you can talk to your inner self and get into a dialogue and find out what's at the root of you know, like how to reassure yourself. So Elaine says programs are coming up to clear. Beautiful time, very powerful time, a very deep time, but can be very difficult. Big time. I mean, I'm seeing that really old stuff coming up and sort of, you know, staring me in the face. And it is really uncomfortable to be recognizing that those echoes of things that we may have been working on for a really long time. So Bernadette says, GP Walsh does amazing classes in tapping. That's awesome, Bernadette. So that's a good resource. And also the tapping solution, which is Nick, I'm not remembering his last name, but if you go to the tapping solution, they have a whole bunch of different tapping processes. So Lisa says, we're in a gibbous moon. It's time to clear and get rid of things that don't serve us. Well, you know what? There's a lot of ugly that's arising, and that's what I tell people in my sessions with them is bring the ugly, because this is an opportunity to be clearing stuff out that'll provide us with deeper freedom and joy. So Elaine says old programs are coming up now to be cleared, no longer useful if you're ready to let go, but this can be very intensely painful and difficult if you're not ready to let go and you resist the changes. So that's the key, Elaine, isn't it? Is release the resistance, you know, allow yourself to go through the changes, to experience what you're experiencing, to allow yourself to move through it and clear it out, and address yourself with compassion and patience and love, and just allow yourself to be graced by the fact that these things are coming up to heal, and they wouldn't be coming up to heal if you weren't ready. So that's it for this morning. I've got to run. I love being with you. Thank you so much for this engaging conversation. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. Please check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network. And Rosalind says, I was the first generation to grow up in the US. My dad broke the cycle by moving away from his farm and joining the Navy. My mom moved to the US through a nurse program. Perhaps they wanted to assimilate into society, so work hard was the identity. I got you. That is the success of immigrants, right? Anyway, So much love to you guys. Gotta run. Hope to see you again here tomorrow. Take care. Lots of love.